Hi, I'm Micah Halpern. Thank you for joining me today as I do some thinking out loud. Our first segment is called Background Briefing. The first thing I've been thinking about is elections and leadership. Israel is always a hot-button topic for Americans, never more so than during an election season. My bubby used to ask the same question I've been getting and will continue to get. Which candidate and which party will be best for the Jews and for Israel? Every once in a while, someone is honest enough with themselves to ask what's really on their mind. Not just who will be better, but also why is Israel always in the center of these issues? Why can't Israel be just like every other country? Here's my answer. Being the center of attention during U.S. general elections, and for that matter, front and center in the news cycle throughout the year, is a mixed blessing. While many people may see it as a negative, to get so much attention, especially because so much of the attention is negative and focuses on Israel's foibles, there is a positive side. Yes, the media will lay blame and responsibility for many issues squarely on the broad shoulders of Israel, but that's okay. Israel is better off being at the center of attention than being Luxembourg. Most people can't even tell you anything about Luxembourg. In fact, most people can't even spell it properly on the first try. They certainly could not locate it on a map. And almost no one knows the capital of Luxembourg. There is no dispute as to the capital of Luxembourg. It's Luxembourg City. Luxembourg's official languages are French and German and Luxembourgish, which is a variant of German. It's not a dialect, actually, because thousands of words are actually French in Luxembourgish. Now that you have that information, unless you're actually one of the 574,219 people who actually live in Luxembourg, you don't really care. The average per capita GDP income is about $101,000 per year per person. That's unbelievable. Here I think Israel would like to swap places with Luxembourg because it has the highest per capita income in the world, even greater than Norway at 87,000 and Qatar at 73,000. Israel's GDP per capita is 34,000 per year, and they rank 33rd in the world. The United States is ranked 10th at $54,000 per capita. The essential point to understand is that Luxembourg is like the mouse that roared, that wonderfully entertaining satirical political novel written by Leonard Wimberly in 1955. In 1959, the novel was made into this spectacular movie with Peter Sellers. The premise of the story is that a tiny European country invades the United States, and they actually end up in control of a nuclear bomb. The smallest country in the world that controls the most powerful weapon in the world, and no one even cared. Just like no one cares about Luxembourg today. People do care about Israel, though. And in the end, the notoriety that Israel receives is a good thing. It helps in terms of production and sales, exports, tourism. It allows Israel to have a reputation far beyond its size and economic prowess. Of course, being a world player in biotech and computers and military and technology is a huge boon. But if Israel were not in the news, no one would care about that either. The reputation that Israel has is far greater than any comparable country in the world. Israel is about the size of Belize or Ecuador. It's 1/3 the size of Lake Michigan, 1/3 the size of Panama. In population ranking, Israel is nestled between Papua New Guinea and Honduras. But from all the attention it receives, all the press it receives, you don't ever deal with the geographic size and its population. You would never know it. Ask any American Joe or Jane, and they'll tell you that Israel is a huge superpower. And in many ways, they are right. Israel is a superpower, but in a tiny area with a population of 8.5 million. Being in the center of things helps maintain that image and secure that reputation. On the same subject, elections and leadership, that is, Jewish leaders must push aside personal proclivities and preferences for the sake of the community they represent. American Jewish leaders represent American Jews and the welfare of American Jewry, and it must be paramount on their agendas, regardless of who holds office. This is a central issue for leadership. Historically, many Jewish leaders failed in this role. One of the obvious reasons for J Street's lightning, even blistering rise to a position of prominence in the Obama White House is for this very reason. J Street was virtually unknown. It was certainly not a mainstream Jewish organization, but it was an outspoken group in support of Obama Democrats. So, while most other Jewish leadership and Jewish organizations were seen as siding with anyone but Obama, especially on the issue of Israel, J Street was seen as a friend by the Obama administration. This tactical mistake hurt the Jewish community and minimized its ability to impact policies on everything from education to the elderly to health care. U.S. Jewish leadership was seen as a mouthpiece for Jerusalem, i.e. the Netanyahu government, and that disqualified much of their messaging. It is without a doubt flattering and enticing for individual leaders and sophisticated organizations to be courted for statements and support, but that flattery is felt only in the short term. The U.S. Jewish community at large deserves better. Jewish leadership needs to be neutral in all elections because the future of Jews in America relies on immediate access to whoever sits in the Oval Office. The health and ultimate power of the Jewish community in the long term requires our leadership to be politically independent and impartial. Jewish leadership should be pro-Israel, but not as an automatic reflexive cheering squad. Israel needs to be one of the many issues of concern for Jewish leadership, one of the many issues presented before the White House. Most importantly, when Jewish leaders are given the green light to go in and deliver their messages to the most powerful leader in the Western world, those messages had better be substantive and attractive, advancing dialogue and advocating change that benefits more than their own narrow constituency. Even if discarded, which most messages to the White House are, they need to have helped the White House advance the conversation and decision-making. I'm not advocating being quiet on issues of import. On the contrary, I mean varying topics so as not to be considered a single-issue broken record. When the White House knows your script by heart, your presentation is lost before it even has begun, and the only purpose you have succeeded at is filling a time slot on the calendar of someone in the White House. The relationship is successful when it is a two-way street, when it is not only Jewish leaders approaching the White House, but when the White House places calls to Jewish leaders asking for advice, even to run interference, even with Israel. Backdoor discussions and agreements are very useful and more prevalent than the public would be led to believe. Israeli political leadership could benefit from this same type of behavior, both in their interaction with American Jewish leadership and general American leadership, congressional, senatorial, and even presidential. But this will never happen if American Jewish leadership is typecast as always pro-Israeli policies and activities. Of course, there are significant exceptions to this paradigm. Obvious exceptions are individual lay leaders who have political points of view and are heavily invested in a single political party. These lay leaders are, for the most part, significant donors and people of power in both the Jewish world and the general political arena. Each of these Jewish lay leaders have successfully forged their own style and modus operandi. Many of these highly successful people donate to both parties, just in case the other party wins. That's smart politics. They might prefer one candidate over the others, but they realize that access to the president is provided to people who help in the election process. Individuals have that luxury. The general Jewish community does not. Politics is essentially a game. Smart players win games. American Jewish leadership needs to always play smart to win big. The future of American Jewry is at stake. On another topic, there are tens, if not hundreds of thousands of children who live under ISIS control. We might not know exactly how many children there are, but we do know that ISIS children have proven to be effective weapons and effective warriors in the battles waged by their elders. While they're schooled in the art of warfare, the children are also schooled in the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. ISIS has a network of schools that the children attend. A foreign affairs piece by Maya Bloom actually attests to 2 schools that cater to English-speaking students. Some of the children are local, but many of them are foreigners. That is, not born and bred in Syria, Iraq, or Yemen. The kids come from all over the world, and the schools are set up to teach them in their native languages. They come from all over, including China, Kazakhstan, from Belgium, from Germany, and England, and the United States. They even come from Israel. An Israeli Arab family, father, mother, and 3 children, were arrested and will stand trial for joining ISIS. They were transferred back to Israel, where they will face the consequences of their actions. The family left Israel with their Israeli passports. The most damaging aspect of their betrayal is that these legally issued Israeli passports are now in the hands of ISIS forgers. The children of ISIS have been featured on PBS specials, the New York Times, ABC, CNN, Fox News, and other media outlets. The story is a ratings magnet. This is a story that engages our curiosity and rewards it with a macabre twist. Descriptions, photos, and videos show children who are smaller than the guns they're holding and training with. In the West, we believe the coverage to be worthy, newsworthy. But like much else, it plays right into the hands of ISIS. Each special we watch is another piece of ISIS propaganda, mesmerizing ISIS wannabes. ISIS figured it out without our help. Children play a very large role in their own propaganda and recruiting materials. They also play a central role in ISIS activity. Highly trained kids are referred to by ISIS elders as their cubs. These cubs are the creme de la creme of ISIS. The indoctrination process begins before they make their way to Syria or Iraq. For most kids, those who join ISIS as a family group, it's often learned about around the family dinner table. Those kids who join on their own learn to love ISIS through their screens, through videos. Once in Syria and Iraq, once they are safely ensconced in the Islamic State, the children undergo a rigorous training and ultimately desensitizes them to horror. They view videos and executions and beheadings. They are told of the terrible behavior that led to the executions themselves, and then brought to witness public executions. In almost all the videos of public executions and beheadings, you see children pushing and shoving to make their way to the front and be in the best position to view the spectacle. The next stage for children is to participate in the executions. Again, there are dozens of videos available for us to view in which children are part of the execution squads. One very famous video highlighted a child from England. The kids help the executioners, often giving them the knives used for beheadings. The indoctrination of these children transforms young kids into killing machines, robots with no sense of remorse or morality. They're the young, impressionable, and moral compass has been totally eclipsed by an education steeped in murder. The children of ISIS are obedient and malleable. Many of these children can be sent back to their original homes or to Western countries that have opened their doors to refugees. They may look like kids, but they are highly trained killers. Europe and Russia will be the destination of most of these ISIS missions, but so is the United States and so is Israel. Child assassins sounds like a theme out of a fantasy adventure movie. Don't be fooled by innocent-looking young faces. Their bodies are clothed in suicide vests. Their hands are grasping AK-47s. Their hearts are the hearts of stone-cold murderers. Coming up next, Points of View. Here are what some important voices have been talking about. First up is an obituary from the New York Times. It's for Jacob Neusner, published October 10th, 2016, and written by William Grimes. Neusner authored about 1,000 books over his life and was one of the most significant and controversial thinkers in the Jewish world. He contributed a huge amount to the study of Judaism. He was extremely gifted and prolific, but he could also be very caustic and extremely critical. But that was part of his greater character. Many obits were published about Jacob Neusner. The New York Times does a very nice job of condensing his contributions. The obit is entitled Jacob Neusner, Judaic scholar who forged interfaith bonds, dies at 84. A version of this article appears in print on October 11th, 2016, on page B13 of the New York edition. The obit begins. Jacob Neusner, a religious historian of enormous breadth and productivity and one of the world's foremost scholars of Jewish rabbinical texts, died on Saturday at his home in Rhinebeck, New York. He was 84. A spokesman for Bard College, where he taught for 20 years, confirmed his death, saying he had been treated for Parkinson's disease for many years. Professor Neusner gave new meaning to the adjective prolific. A life of Yochanan ben Zakkai, his 1962 study of one of the most important Jewish sages, marked the beginning of an astonishingly productive scholarly career. Over the next half-century, he published more than 900 books devoted to history, source analysis, comparative religion, and legal theory. He also edited and translated, with others, nearly the entirety of the Jewish rabbinical texts. His editions of the Jerusalem Talmud and the Babylonian Talmud run to more than 50 volumes. In Jacob Neusner, an American Jewish iconoclast, the Judaic scholar Aaron W. Hughes called him perhaps the most important American-born Jewish thinker this country has produced. The obit quotes from a piece in Tablet written by Shaul Magid. It reads, "A fierce polemicist, Professor Neusner was part of almost every significant American Jewish controversy since World War II. Shaul Magid, a professor of Jewish and religious studies at Indiana University, wrote in the online Jewish magazine Tablet in August. He insisted on regarding Jews not as the chosen people or marked in any special way, but simply as one religious and ethnic group among many." The obit concludes, after hundreds of books, he still regarded himself as a student. In translating the classics of Judaism, in theory and in practice, he wrote, "No serious inquiry into the classics of Judaism can start without a systematic retranslation of those classics. Time and again, for age succeeding age, all learning begins in the naked encounter with the unadorned document, word by word, sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph, chapter by chapter, document by document, all of it, all together, but, alas, step by step. After 20 years of work, of a sustained and systematic order, I am still crawling." Neusner was, without a doubt, very difficult. He ruffled many feathers. He kept plowing along. His teachings have influenced many and will live long after personal memories of him fade. He will be missed. Second up is a column from ynetnews.com, and it's by Alex Fishman. It was published on October 19th, 2016, and it was entitled, "Why Does Egypt Need Such Expensive Weapons Systems?" Here's how Fishman begins. There are people in Israel who have been feeling butterflies in their stomach for a long time now in light of the fact that Egypt, which is experiencing a deep economic crisis, has been purchasing the world's most expensive weapons systems at quantities that rich Saudi Arabia would take pride in. Only recently, the Egyptian Navy received a second Mistral-class helicopter carrier, a particularly expensive French system which was originally built for the Russian Navy. The Egyptians purchased two. Fishman continues, the Russians are also selling Egypt S-400's anti-aircraft systems. The Egyptians are buying entire squadrons of SA-17s and SA-22 anti-aircraft missiles. Grandma, Israeli officials ask, why do you need such expensive anti-aircraft systems? Whose fighter jets do you wish to shoot down? The Islamic State's planes? Sudan's? Does Libya have planes which are threatening you? And Fishman concludes, in order to escape the day-to-day distress, al-Sisi has handed over entire civil monopolies to the army, allowing it to keep subsidized basic commodities. The Egyptian army is manufacturing diapers, medicine, cement, flour, and more, and is basically managing not only Egyptian security policy, but also the national economy. As long as the Egyptian army is growing stronger in order to turn Egypt into a leading force in the Sunni world and to secure al-Sisi's regime, Israel is trembling and keeping quiet. But all that could disappear in a minute. According to certain estimates, Egypt could get caught in a social and governmental chaos in as early as 2018. If that happens, all the military strength it's building, including the deployment in Sinai, could take on a different, perhaps hostile meaning. Someone should start thinking about that in our diligent cabinet. Coming up, commentary through cartoons where pictures tell the story. There are 3 cartoons on the agenda today. All are by Nick Chapati. Chapati draws for the International New York Times, as well as several other international sites. The first cartoon describes Aleppo, and it was published on October 3rd, 2016. A sign on the ground partially spells Aleppo. There's destruction throughout, and in the center is Putin saying Pax Russiana, meaning the Russian peace deal. Smoke is everywhere, and Assad is walking in the background. This next cartoon, published on October 17th, a scholar is in his study, filled with books, clearly an author. He's looking at the front page of a paper announcing Bob Dylan receiving the Nobel Prize in Literature. The author muses and mutters to himself, "I should have been a rock star." The final cartoon, published on October 23rd, 2016, it depicts the leaders of various groups fighting ISIS in Mosul. They're in front of their tanks and weapons, and they say all in unison, "On my command." This is a perfect depiction of how there is a lack of direction and leadership in the battle against ISIS. Everyone and everybody thinks that they're in charge. In a moment, my own perspective and a few predictions. Iran and the United States are trading jabs, missile jabs actually, off the coast of Yemen, in the Sea of Aden, in the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb. At the stake is the main waterway that flows from Asia and Africa all the way to Europe. Here is the order of events and a little background. Yemen is in crisis, torn apart by civil war between Saudi-supported established traditional Sunni leadership and Shiite Houthis supported by Iran. A change in the intensity of the conflict, come bloodbath, came when the Houthi attacked an auxiliary naval ship sailing under the United Arab Emirates flag. The attack took place off the coast of Yemen in the Gulf of Aden, off the coast of East Africa. This is in an area of the Straits of Bab el-Mandeb. The strait is enormously strategic. Bab el-Mandeb links the Gulf of Aden to the Red Sea. The Red Sea connects to the Suez Canal, to the Mediterranean Sea. Whoever controls that strait controls all shipping to Europe, all of it. Yemen sits at the mouth of that strategic strait. Iran, which already controls many of these areas along the coast of the Gulf of Aden, is sponsoring the challenge to take over Yemen and gain control of the entire shipping lane. Get the picture? Iran is not a neighbor of Yemen, nor the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb. Iran is situated on a parallel gulf to the west, the Persian Gulf. But Iran wants to control that region, and they especially want control of the Straits of Bab el-Mandeb. The United States and the Sunnis, each for their own reasons, and for good reasons, cannot permit Bab el-Mandeb to fall into the hands of Iran. I would argue that the entire foundation is actually built on the unspoken reason that Iran is actually supporting the Houthis in the first place, in their revolt in Yemen. It's just to gain control of the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb. With that control, Iran's power will increase exponentially. And so, in response to Iran's moves in the area, the United States has moved several naval vessels into the area. The U.S. naval destroyer USS Mason was patrolling in the area in the Straits of Bab el-Mandeb when it was attacked by 2 Houthi missiles. According to the Pentagon briefing, this was not merely a test or a misfire. It was an outright attack on a U.S. ship that missed. In response, Iran dispatched not 1 but 2 warships to Aval Bushar and the region. Tasnim, a semi-official Iranian news agency, reported on October 13th that Iranian naval ships were sent back as check against the rising pirate activity in the area. Really? Pirate activity? This is what the report said from Iran. Iran's Alvand and Bushehr warships have been dispatched to the Gulf of Aden to protect trade vessels from piracy. There was, of course, no mention in the semi-official announcement that the Iranian ships were dispatched a mere 2 hours after the radar stations were struck by U.S. cruise missiles. This battle for control of one of the most significant waterways in the world is, for the most part, being waged through proxies, the Houthi Shiites against the Sunnis of Yemen. They're mere puppets. Their strings are being pulled, respectively, by Iran and Saudi Arabia. But in a sinister twist, when the Houthi Iranians chose to attack the United States directly, the United States hit back. I think that the U.S. response took Iran by surprise. I am not certain that the Iranians expected the United States to hit back. I am certain that the ante has now been upped. Iran may be taking and making a play for control of the Straits of Bab el-Mandeb, but the United States and the Sunnis are going to do whatever they can to prevent that from happening. That's how important these Straits of Bab el-Mandeb are to world harmony and world trade. I knew it would happen, and it did. Oil hit $50 a barrel. The Saudis are elated. So are the Iranians, and everyone else in OPEC too. To give some perspective, in January, oil was as low as $30 a barrel. In February, it fell even more to $26 a barrel. And now, oil is expected to hit $60 a barrel by year's end. The changes are due to several factors. Two most important factors involve Venezuela and Russia. During the first week of October, Iran and Venezuela met and agreed to freeze production in an effort to stabilize the market. That's code for increasing the price of oil. Then, during the third week of October, OPEC and Russia agreed to a production reduction. There is great distrust of Russia, yet the price of oil is still rising. This is good news for Iran and Saudi Arabia, and of course for the Russians, it's bad news for us. We've been thinking out loud about a lot today. Now that you know what I've been thinking, let me know what you're thinking. Email me at micah@jbstv.org. Tweet me at Micah Halpern. Tell me what you think. Before we end, let me leave you with one piquante piece of information. I've been speaking about Bab. I translated it as straight. It means much more than that. It means a gate, an opening, a passage. We use the same word in Aramaic. We have 3 volumes of the Talmud that are titled with the same word, Baba, Baba Kama, Baba Metzia, Baba Batra. Bab and also Baba mean gate in Aramaic too. Aramaic is the language of the Talmud. These 3 works were at first one very long volume dealing with nazikin, damages, torts, and other civil matters. The large volume was divided into 3 more manageable works, Baba Kama meaning the first gate, Baba Metzia meaning the middle gate, and Baba Batra meaning the final gate. They were so large that they could not be carried easily. Now, they are each still large, but manageable. Thank you for thinking out loud with me, Micah Halpern. Let's think out loud again next week on JBS.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS, the Jewish Broadcasting Service, with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the JBS homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to Jem, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.